Have you ever thought about teaching English in Italy? That's our topic for today. Via. Ciao a tutti. What's up, everyone? Today we're doing a video that I've wanted to make for a long time. And today we're talking about my job, which is teaching English here in Italy. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video. Let's get started. Cominciamo. So I've had a few requests to make this video. Some people have been asking me about my job, what's it like to work here in Italy. And today I'm just going to give you my perspective. Granted, every experience for anybody who's ever taught in this country is different. But I think what you'll find is that some of my experiences are probably very similar to others who have taught here. Let's first establish a bit of credibility. I've been teaching in this country since 2009. I currently work in Rome. I've worked in Rome for the past 5 years, and I've also worked in the Naples and Salerno area. And then up until about 2 years ago, I used to work at the summer camps in England. In all honesty, if you are a native English speaker and you're looking to work in Italy, this is probably not the easiest job to do, but let's just say it's the most readily available. In my opinion, one of the biggest benefits of teaching English in this country is that it allows you to really insert yourself into Italian society. Because I think that once you're able to find a job and work in a foreign country, in essence, you do feel like you're a part of that country. So it's a rewarding feeling. Let's face it, once you have a job and you're starting to make some money, then you can finally enjoy la dolce vita. Another perk of this job is that you meet a lot of people. I've taught thousands of students and I've seen all kinds of different people, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've taught children, I've taught adults, and it really is very interesting to observe people, just to get to know your students. Something else I realized is that when you learn to be a teacher, when you interact with people in a classroom, you are in essence learning people skills. Like you're learning to manage people, to manage a class, and in my opinion, this is a job skill which can be transferable. Other advantages that come to mind is that if you work in a private school, then you're mainly going to be working in the afternoons. You might work in the mornings, but my hours have mostly been between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. So if you're not a morning person, then this might be ideal. One thing that I've always liked about teaching is that you will never work 40 hours a week. However, I must clarify something very important. You will never work 40 hours a week in the classroom. Any teacher anywhere can back me up on this, but there's a difference between the hours that you work in the classroom and the hours that you work outside the classroom. The work you do outside the classroom is a lot, and in my experience, this has been mainly lesson planning, but you also have to plan maybe even exams, and you also have to correct homework. So this could take up a lot of your time, but it depends on the school you work at. However, let's be realistic. I don't think this job is for everybody. The first thing that I want to mention is that if you're somebody who really has no passion for it, in other words, if you don't find any joy or any type of satisfaction in helping somebody to learn your language, or in a basic sense, to pass on knowledge to somebody else, then I don't recommend this job for you. Now, if your plan is to stay in Italy for a short term, this could be less than a year, maybe 2 years, I don't know, then this might be a good idea because, as I said before, this is probably the most readily available job for somebody who speaks English and wants to work in this country. Something else which could be a drawback is patience. In essence, if you're an impatient person, then I don't recommend teaching, especially when you deal with teenagers and kids. Those are moments where your nerves are really tested. This is something that I'm still working on. One of the other big questions that comes up is the pay. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you are any sort of an educator from the United States or elsewhere really, I speak of the United States because that's where I'm from, do not expect the same salary here as you would back home. This is just one man's experience, but the pay that I've received in this country is anywhere between 900 and 1,600 euros. With that said, something very important that you must keep in mind is that you really shouldn't judge the pay scale with what you're used to back home. Because if you make, say, 1,200 euros a month, for many people that's actually a good salary and it's considered quite normal here in Italy. And you also have to consider the fact that your cost of living might be less here, so you might find that this salary could suit your needs. This greatly varies depending on the school that you work for and also where you work in this country. But I think a lot of expats would probably agree with me that this is roughly the range of pay that you can expect here. Should you work in the private or should you work in the public schools? To be honest, I'm not really going to talk much about the public option because I don't have much experience working there. I have worked in the public schools, but the bulk of my experience has been privately, in private schools. I have physically worked in the public schools here in Rome, and the reason why is because I was working for a private school and they had contracts with the local schools, and so basically I was subcontracted out. And it's not really an experience that I care to repeat. I mean, some of the kids were nice, really, but it was just mega stressed. Don't get me wrong, some of the kids were great. I had some interesting times. There was a lot of intelligent young minds that I work with, but a lot, no. But anyway, if you are looking to teach here in Italy, then the best thing to do is to find a private school. And actually, today is part 1 of 2. In my next video, I'm going to explain what to look for and how to find a good private school here in Italy. All right, next we have qualifications. So what exactly do you need to be able to be hired at a private school here in Italy, or any school for that matter? Well, it's just common sense, really. You know, when you do an interview, it's like any other job interview. What do you bring to the table? You know, what can you offer your potential employer? Also, the more experience you have, the better. Now, if you have absolutely no experience, then I don't think that's necessarily a slam door in your face as far as, you know, being able to work in a private school. In that situation, though, I think the best thing to do is to find a school that's willing to train you. They're out there, but, you know, you got to do your homework. I was going to mention this in part 2, but I do want to say something about this in this video, and that is, will you be hired just because you're a native speaker? To be honest, I would say no. And if you are offered a job just because you know how to speak English, then that's a school that I don't know if I'd want to work there, to be honest. On that note, let me just say that just because you can speak a language does not mean that you can necessarily teach it. I found that out. Another important question that comes up here in regards to credentials is do you need a Tefl or do you need a Celta? I have the Tefl, and in my opinion, the two are very similar. A while back, I had a friend that did the Celta certificate, and based on how she described it, I do think the Celta is a bit more intense compared to the Tefl, and the reason why is because they go a bit more in depth in regards to lesson planning, how learners learn, so you can really do both. But I would say that if you're looking to teach here in Italy, I think it's better if you go for the Celta. The reason why is because the Celta does seem to be the European standard for teaching. In other words, it's the certificate that they look for the most when they're looking for teaching certificate qualifications in Europe. In a general sense, I do think that the more serious schools are going to require more certifications. And to be honest, that's good, really, because for me, this shows signs of stability in a school. This is particularly true if you're looking to work in private schools such as a university, an academy, or any kind of international school. And there's plenty of them here in Rome. Also, Italians are not always the most proficient in English, and so, you know, it can be frustrating as a teacher, but on the plus side, this always guarantees you work. One of the other big topics that comes up in regards to working in Italy is how do you do it legally? The question of whether you need to be legal to work here in Italy is, for me, it's an obvious yes. If you're wondering if I do work here legally, the answer is yes. I'm an Italian citizen, as you can see here, and this was actually one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life. I got this in 2008 because I discovered that I had the right via my great-grandfather. So in essence, I inherited my passport from him. Not the actual passport, but citizenship, but I think you understood that. Now, if you're not an Italian citizen, but you have an EU passport, then as you probably know, you do have the legal right to live and work here. Now, some of you are probably thinking, yeah, David, that's great, you know, lucky you. But I don't have any EU grandparents. I can't get an EU passport. Not to worry. I have worked with Americans and also other foreigners here who were able to work here legally. And the way to do that is to get a residence permit, and this is called the permesso di soggiorno. Now, since I've never needed one, I'm not an expert, so I don't really know how you go about getting it. But as I said before, I have worked with people and I have seen plenty of foreigners who were able to get it, so I don't think it poses a great deal of difficulty. Something else important that I want to mention is that I wouldn't count on your school to help you with your immigration status. I've never seen any school here that helps students teachers, excuse me, get a visa or just be able to stay here legally. So that's something that you have to do on your own. I've never seen the authorities check schools to make sure that all their teachers are working there legally. But just because I've seen it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So make sure you're legal when you work here. Now, if you are planning on staying long-term here in Italy, possibly for the rest of your life, and you really found your calling, you really want to teach, this is absolutely what you want to do, then I do have a few suggestions for you. In my opinion, the type of schools that offer the best long-term stability, apart from the public school option, are universities, academies, and international schools. Also, for those of you that have an entrepreneurial spirit, then you might want to consider opening up your own school. I've met a number of expats here who started teaching like anybody else, and then eventually they decided to open up their own business, and it could provide long-term stability for you. Now, if you don't feel like working for somebody and you really want to be your own boss, but you don't quite have the capitals to start up your own school, then you might want to consider private lessons. Private lessons are actually good side income. I've done plenty of them, and they come in handy, actually. Now, if you're a really good teacher and you're able to keep your students for a considerable period of time, then what you could do is build up a nice base of students, and this way, you have work, in essence, all year. I've seen students who are able to make a living just off private lessons, and they do that because of word of mouth. You're a good teacher, one of your students recommends you to a friend, and then the chain reaction starts. And for some people, this has been very lucrative. Another teaching opportunity that you might want to consider is the idea of teaching online. Now, this comes in two forms. The first one that comes to mind is actually physically living here in Italy, but you could also be hired by a company in a different country. For example, you could live here and you could also be hired by a Chinese school, and you spend your day teaching Chinese kids. That's one possibility. The other aspect of teaching online actually happened to me this year. Because of this whole coronavirus mess, I've been teaching primarily at home since March, I would say. And the reason why I mentioned this is that I think that teaching in this country is probably going to go in that direction. I can't speak for the public schools, but at least in the private sector, I think what we're going to be doing is doing a mix of teaching in the comfort of our home over the internet, and also some in-person teaching. And we have to see what's going to happen in the future. If you really want to teach in this country, but the pay that I mentioned before just doesn't quite cut it, then I strongly suggest that you get a second source of income. I mean, this is something that we should all be doing, whether you teach or whatever job you do. For example, making money online in recent years has been a real boom, and I think it's something that we should all look into. Okay, that's going to do it for today's video. I really hope it was helpful, especially if you're considering teaching English in this country. If I haven't answered your question, then leave me a comment below and let me know what you thought of the video also. But just remember that I am going to be doing the next video on this topic, and I'm going to be showing you how to find a private school. But yeah, if something wasn't clear, please let me know. If you haven't done it already, make sure you hit the like button. And also, if you want to see more of my videos in the future, make sure that you subscribe, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you don't miss any of my future videos. And also, if you think somebody might find this video useful, do share it out. That'd be great. Grazie mille per l'attenzione, ci vediamo alla prossima. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.